Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And yes, I got my hairs did today. So I thought I'd let it down for the recording and then it's going back up in the bun. Today I want to talk about healing the emotional harm within ourselves. So this is an interesting topic that it came up this morning in my meeting because it was something I was just thinking about the day before, yesterday. I was thinking about somebody, I still don't know who it was, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. But I was thinking about how there's somebody that kept crossing my mind about whether I owed them an amends or not. Um, and I thought, they probably don't even remember. Like, it's probably something that I'm all spun up about, or not even spun up about, but it still keeps coming to mind and it bothers me. Like, when I think about it, I feel just a little uncomfortable that, that I may have offended this person or said something wrong, or you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know if it's enough to make a amends or not, but it keeps crossing my mind. So this came up in the daily reflection this morning online. And so it was about, even though we feel that some sort of harm that we may have done to another person, or something we had done that maybe wasn't as harmful to them as it feels to us, it like keeps coming back to mind. So it's still causing me emotional harm. And that's what the steps are about. It's about letting go of that stuff, cleaning out our dark place. So even though something may not have caused somebody to keep thinking about it year after year, if you keep thinking about it, it's worth putting on your list to make an amends to them. And I haven't really talked about this in the podcast yet, but there are lots of different ways to make amends to somebody. And maybe that's worth doing an episode about. But we'll stick to the topic here. So the idea is that I wanted to explore is when somebody keeps coming to mind and it's uncomfortable and it's causing us to hold on to something, it means that there's something still left in the dark place, in our dark place. That's what I call it. So the morning's reading from Daily Reflection was quoting from the 12 and 12, 12 steps and 12 traditions. And it said, in many instances, we shall find that though the harm due to others has not been great, the emotional harm we have done to ourselves has. And this, like I said, it made me pause. I was like, that's exactly what I was thinking about. And I was questioning this same exact thing. I was reflecting on what it was making me feel like, as opposed to what I probably didn't make them feel like, so I'm continuing to inflict stress on myself without really even realizing it. So I think, think about, how often have you brushed off some small slight you made against, somebody that you work with or a family member, and thinking it was so insignificant that it didn't really warrant an apology, and you're just like, it wasn't a big deal. But the more you think about it, the more it bothers you. and you start telling yourself this story like, oh, they probably don't even remember it. Why should I bring it up again? But what happens when that person's name or incident keeps coming to mind, it's leaving you with this uneasy feeling, this guilty feeling. And that's what the reading talked about this morning. So this is the importance of where we can make amends. Just because you do step 8 and 9 doesn't mean that you don't go back to it. And you can do a step 9 at any time. I mean, that's what step 10 is. Step 10 is you can do this for the rest of your life. You know, of course, we want to avoid having to make an amends, but there are times when at the moment, you're not really thinking that it was a big deal, but it like becomes a big deal, you know? Um, and that's where this step 10, this ongoing ability to make amends at any time comes to play. So when somebody repeatedly comes to mind and you have this feeling of discomfort lingering, then we need to do something about it, because this is an action program. So um, what I'm learning today is that whatever that was that I was thinking about yesterday or the day before, when it comes back to mind, I'll know it because I didn't write it down or anything, but I know it was something that is a reoccurring like feeling of discomfort about a person that I feel like I need to talk to, but I just don't remember who it was. But when that person's name comes to mind again, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to act on it this time. So even though if whatever it is, the harm that the quote unquote harm that I caused may seem rather small, the act of just reaching out to somebody and acknowledging something is bothering you and you want to make sure that that everything's okay, you know, a sincere conversation about mending the relationship if there is anything that is off, right? It's about healing your own emotional wounds that you are continuously inflicting on yourself. And that relief that comes, that's where serenity comes. You know, as soon as you scrape off some of that guilt or shame or whatever it is that you're feeling, that discomfort, it just allows more serenity to shine. And you can feel a little calmer and relaxed again until you think of the next thing that bothers you. I mean, I'm constantly thinking of things that from my past that I'm weighing if it's bad enough to reach out to the person or not. Do I just let it go? I mean, there are years and years of this that I have lived my life as an active alcoholic, and I couldn't possibly go back and contact everybody that I may have harmed over all of these years. There are people who have passed. You know, that friend that I talk about a lot who passed away 2.5 years ago. I have things that I think about with regards to him that I'm like, it comes to mind and I feel uncomfortable, like that I wish I could do something about it. I wish I could make some sort of amends. Well, I can. And I'm remembering that today as I talk. I can write it down. I can write a letter to him. You know, I know he's passed, but there's a lot of cleansing that can be done just by writing it down or talking to somebody about it. I mean, what I feel about that I would want to make amends with to him is something that I really would rather not talk to anybody about. I'd rather just write it down. So there's lots of ways to do it depending on who it is. There are people that I went to school with that I think about, man, I wish I could apologize for the way that I behaved then, you know? But these people are like married and have kids now and stuff. The last thing I need to be doing is reaching out and disrupting their lives. But there's stuff that I can do. There's so many things like volunteer for something that is related to something that you maybe did with that person. Maybe this person was somebody that you used to go running with or something like that. Then participate in a 5K or something. Like dedicate time to just think about and give back. If it's not just raising money for a 5K, like that's a way to make amends. There's lots of different ways to do it. And it's such a crucial part of our recovery to clear away that emotional clutter that weighs us down because it keeps us, it may not feel like it at the time, but it keeps us from living fully. If I keep thinking about if somebody keeps coming to mind, I bet the more I think about that person, the longer I'm pausing life to think about it. And when I think about it, there is an emotional reaction that happens that makes me feel stress, a certain level of stress. And if I can do one small act to clear that away, then that's allowing me to not steal those precious moments away when I could be enjoying myself and rather I'm thinking about harm that I had done to somebody years ago. And that's what I do. I get wrapped up in something that happened years ago and I never let it go. My mom and I always joke about how we are able to hold a grudge forever. um, so one of the toughest parts of recovery is not just forgiving others, but forgiving ourselves. And I think that's part of the amends that can happen. Maybe you don't need to reach out to that person that keeps coming to mind. There are a lot of those situations from college that and after college that I need to forgive myself because I think back and I'm like, that's not who I want to be. That's not who I wish I was back then. That's not how I wish I behaved back then. And I need to forgive myself for acting that way, for doing whatever it is that I did that I'm ashamed of. Self forgiveness um, often can start with making amends to other people by acknowledging our wrongs and taking responsibility. And then that dismantles that self-imposed emotional barrier that has us stuck in guilt and shame. But when that can't happen, use your God box, write it down. Like, just get it out of here, get it out of between your ears, and get it either on paper or, you know what's interesting? A whiteboard, writing down something on a whiteboard and then erasing it um, is a great idea. If you have a mirror, you can grab a whiteboard marker and a dry erase marker and write whatever it is you want to make an amends for, or a letter to somebody or whatever. Write it all out on the mirror and then you can just erase it with a whiteboard eraser. I find that to be a really good way of getting things out of my brain. And, you know, keep in mind this is very much associated with what I was talking about yesterday with using your imagination. You know, um, I am picturing when I'm doing something like writing something on a whiteboard. I also have this remarkable tablet that I've talked about in the past, but it's an electronic uh paper tablet thing, and it's got a little pen, and I can write on it and then just erase. So it's if you're uncomfortable writing something down, which I have been in the past, it's a way to write it down and then get rid of it. Some people write it on a piece of paper and burn it. You don't have to be so dramatic. You can just, you could, I bet if it's good, if it helps, you can burn it, but you could just write it down on something that is erasable and like truly erasable and get rid of it that way. And at least it's out of your brain. And I picture that stuff being almost like it's tangible and it's in my brain. And by writing it down, it is no longer up here in my brain. It is out. It is out of me, out of my body. And it opens up space wherever that was in my body for healing and for growth. And it's not always easy to make that first step to just pick up a pen, uh, especially when the harm that we have done seems minimal and we're like, I'm probably making a too big of a deal out of it. You're not, because if you keep thinking about it, it's not too big of a deal. That emotional impact of not addressing the issue is far greater if you just let it lie, far greater than it was when it started if it keeps coming back, right? So today I want to encourage you to reflect on this kind of thing. Is there someone who keeps coming to mind? Is there a person that you feel like maybe you've wronged, maybe even in the smallest way? Like, I challenge you to like put that person on a list and find a way, maybe not a list if you if you don't want to make a big list, that might be overwhelming, but write the person's name down and acknowledge that it keeps coming to mind, and either reach out to the person and say, look, you may not even be aware that this happened or that I'm feeling this way, but I just wanted to reach out and make a sincere apology and see how it changes your relationship with that person. I've told you guys before that when I do my step 10 before bed, I've had instances where I've actually reached out to people before bed. Like I've just sent a quick text because it did seem really small. It seemed like, I'm probably worried about it and they're not. And I've had instances where they were, it wasn't something they would have ever brought up to me, but since I brought it up, yeah, they took what I said not the way that I intended it. And what ended up happening is I made our relationship stronger by just showing how much I care about our relationship, and nurturing our emotional well-being together as a pair. So making amends can be powerful, even if there isn't something really big and heavy that you need to make an amends for. It can be something small. And typically what I have experienced is only good has come out of me reaching out, only ever good. Whether that person was caught up in what it was that I was thinking about or not. and it emptied out what I didn't want to hold on to. And then I was able to wake up in the morning feeling light and ready to go, ready to start my day. And I wasn't weighed down by anything that was really troublesome. So, good thing to keep in mind. And I'm going to stay alert for whatever, whoever that was in my mind that I was thinking about the other day that keeps coming to mind. I have a terrible memory now. Legitimately, I'm diagnosed. I have a terrible memory now. I can joke about it. But okay, so that's all I've got for you today. Thanks so much for listening.